Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, and the people in my walls. Welcome to episode 2 of my series that I will be doing on the lore of my world, Vivventia. Today we are joined by a very special guest, a friend of mine, whom I will just be calling Cassus, due to considering they have a character in this world named Cassus. Why don't thou introduce thyself?
You lied! Sorry. Hello? You kidnapped me to listen to him yet? Send help?
They'll never find you. Um, In today's video, we'll be talking about the divine within the world of Alphetia. Sorry, Vivventia. Alphetia is the continent, the main continent. The one in the map of the first video. All right. We will be starting with the Overseer himself. Now, the Overseer is the sole divine being within this world, if you can really. He's the sole deity. He is known to be incredibly fair in most judgments, and though because of the way the divine work within most of my settings, he is still quote unquote human. I don't know how human you can get with the face that you see on screen now. He has several divine followers that all, listen to him and help him do his duties. There are other gods in Viventia, technically, but those are usually, they're either A, false gods people have made up, in order to just be different, or because they don't know the Overseer exists, or aspects of the Overseer that people are worshiping because they don't know that there's a deity above the aspect. There are only a few of these, but we'll get there eventually. And since I mentioned, I might as well talk about it now. The aspects of the Overseer. Now, the aspects of the Overseer are his lieutenants. They're his deputies, his Catholic saints, as I mentioned them last time. Catholic saints, but cooler. They serve as the orchestrators of the Overseer's will and conduct, duties for him, whether it be the aspect of magic, regulating the rules of the world's magic, to the aspect of war, ensuring that all wars are, not too bad. He doesn't. Um, the condition for too bad is really high up there. Um,
Especially
cons-
considering we got gassed.
that's not against his rules. That's not that bad. It could be worse. You
The
could
cat
have.
literally melted.
He doesn't really. They're trying actively to stop those guys. We'll explain that in a different episode in the future. Stop spoiling. There's 198 aspects of the Overseer. Though some churches across the world don't know about all of them. The Church of the Overlord in Arendon believes there are 62. The Church of Zeladia believes that there are 74. The one in Moruk says there's 6, as I'm pretty sure I mentioned last time. They're a teensy bit behind. The Church of the Overseer in the Knights of Infinity, however, is believed there are 183, because they know all but 15 as of 9 PHW. If you don't know what that means, watch the other one, please. Some perks of being an aspect of the Overseer include immortality, the ability to shapeshift, like they can look however they want, whenever, and change whenever they want. Um, the mastery over all forms of magic, even those that the aspect of magic says you shouldn't be able to do. They can speak any language, or at least understand any language, or just thing that they want to learn, and are all given a specific aspect, hence the name of the world that they're supposed to oversee or protect. They also have the ability to speak Celeste, which is a language only them and the Overseer can speak, which works in a way where anyone that the speaker wants to understand. So, like, say we'll use the aspect of magic, for example. The aspect of magic, say he's talking to a crowd, but he only wants certain members of that crowd to understand him. Because of the way Celeste works, only the ones he wants to understand him will understand him. The ones that he does not want to understand him just will hear Celeste in its purest form. Is there any questions, comments that you would like to make? Since that's kind of what you're here to
Um,
do.
yes. So does that mean any of the times the overseer has spoken to just one member in the party without the rest of the party hearing, would that fall under that, or is that just a different thing?
That's what they're talking about is the fact that I'm running a D&D campaign set in this world. The well, usually they're experiencing a magical trance where they're transported into, or like at least a magical like vision where they just see the overseer, and sometimes the overseer will talk to them. If I wanted to do it the way Celeste works, I would to the party say that the overseer is saying something but you can't understand it, and then DM whoever can understand him what they can understand or what they hear. Interrupt me at any time to actually ask questions. That's allowed here. Um, we should go over some specific aspects now, because that's all I really have down right now, minus some fun things. There are some aspects that I do have written down currently are, as previously mentioned, the aspect of magic. He is from the extinct greater elf species, and his name is Ilraskian Sulfana. He has the ability to decide what forms of magic or spells or whatever gets to be allowed within Vivventia. The way he does it is through what we might call case law, where he can just where he goes spell to spell, form of magic to form of magic, and he manually and one by one chooses what's allowed and what's not. He's been doing that since he became an aspect 7,000 years ago, and it's hard work, even for an aspect, though that does not stop his fellow aspects from realizing that the way he presents himself, his physical form, with eye bags and like a very poor posture, is because he wants pity. He's also just kind of a jerk to like a lot of people, and he's very attention seeking. He craves attention. He's been around for 6,944 years. You'd think he would have gotten over it. No, he and the aspect of knowledge have a tense relationship amongst the two of them, as as Magic believes knowledge is lazy, because she has less work to actually have to do, and knowledge is among the aspects that call Magic the aspect of assholery. To the
No.
yes, the next aspect is the one I just mentioned, the aspect of knowledge. I don't have anything written down for him, but I can make it up right now, as I do often. The aspect of knowledge is a wood elf named Felrina. No last name. The culture she came from didn't have those, and she was uplifted in the early 5000s BHW, um, and quickly started a rivalry with the aspect of magic. Um, she commonly is known to talk crap behind his back about him, while also being the guardian of the world's knowledge. Any discovery that is made, any breakthrough that is made by mortal kind, it immediately appears in a book relevant on the subject within a grand library within the heavenly realms where the aspects exist in. She is also known to help cultures rediscover things that they've once lost every now and again. Though she's under strict orders to only do this once every few decades, because if everyone knew everything, then it'd take all the fun out. That is a real quote from the overseer.
That tracks.
Yeah, he's a little silly sometimes. The next aspect we will go on to are the aspects of war and the aspect the aspect of war and the aspect of peace. They were the second and third aspects ever created, or ever uplifted, because all aspects were once mortal. They were uplifted in 7,432 BHW, and ever since the 7,300 BHW, they have been married. Um, very happily for the most part, though, they, sometimes for the first 3,000 years argued, but ever since then, smooth as a, I don't know, freshly opened peanut butter. I don't know. The aspect of peace is in charge of ensuring that times of peace, they aren't all things being burnt down, but also that, mortal kind doesn't stagnate by making sure new challenges arrive or by starting things. And the aspect of war is, as previously mentioned, ensure that wars don't get too destructive, or at least too bad. The aspect of war is human. His name is Kraskana Oranos, and the aspect of peace is a greater elf named Sralzia Anamia. Though, silly, fun little fact about them: the overseer, when he uplifts a new aspect, he'll tell them, you are now the aspect of blank, and he'll tell them, all the good things about being an aspect, as I've previously done, and then he'll just kind of like let them loose in the heavenly realm to go do whatever, figure out what they're supposed to do. And the people that usually, handle that is these two aspects. They'll usually teach new aspects about, like, the dynamics, social dynamics, just what they're supposed to do, things that they can do, how to use all their cool new stuff. You'd be surprised how hard it is to learn how to shapeshift when you previously couldn't do so. And, they also tell them what pretty much, daily, weekly, century, I don't really know what the centuryly, what the routine is, pretty much. This is why the overseer is known amongst the aspects as, the boss, the guy in charge, the big man, while war and peace are typically called mom and dad, because, everyone goes to them with most of their problems. They can handle it. They've been around for 7,000 years. They know their way around. They've been watching, the planet pretty much since life was spreading on it. They're actually both from the lost continent of the old world, or the home world. It's not a planet, it's a continent. Don't ask. Well, I guess I'll probably mention it since it has something to do with the divine. The next we will go to is
That's a topic for another episode.
No, it isn't. We'll talk about it here. We'll just go into deeper depths with it in probably the next episode. I don't really know. The next thing we'll talk about is the aspect of Alphabetcha, who has been around, since the 7,300s, about. He is a member of a aspect species, which are a species where their only members are aspects, like greater elves now, greater dragons, and this guy, who's a member of a species called a world serpent. They are known that because, well, they're absolutely gigantic. Well, I guess he's absolutely gigantic. And because they pretty much never stop growing. Like, they never stop getting longer, because they're giant snakes. Though, because he's an aspect, he can kind of, slow it down and ensure that he doesn't get too large, while also ensuring that, he stays massive. Because, you want to be intimidating, you're an aspect. He is sapient, because, you become an aspect, you're kind of sapient now, but, he kind of shuts his brain off and acts like he did many thousands of years ago. The next aspect we'll go on to is the aspect of sustenance, a human being named Chef, Shef. Can you guess why he was chosen? He was once a king of a nation known as Catafaria, though before he, fully left, before he left to, go do his duties with the rest of the world, he was seen conducting an act of the divine, which, both made Cataferia's soil more fertile so they could provide food for all their peoples ever. Um, and it solidified him as their deity. He's one of the few that, because they don't know about the Overseer, they worship him as a god. Because, they don't know about the Overseer, as I said 3 seconds ago. He's tried to keep this a secret, as most of them have. And he has since gone on to help famines. That's his main job. He is to ensure that the people of the world are always well fed. You would be surprised how many famines happen in a world with an ever increasing population. Not a lot of good scientific
What?
advancement. I know, shocking.
What? I never would have guessed.
Mm-hmm. Ines aspect is one that became, aspect alongside alongside Chef, and also is one that is worshipped as a god in his homeworld. The aspect of music. A human named Yamaha definitely has no relation to the name of the music slash motorcycle making company Yamaha. Don't look into it. Was the emperor, yeah, emperor of the divine empire of Ya, before he became an aspect in the early 2050s BHW. He's already considered a god king by many in his realm, but seeing his ascension to aspect status was the final nail in that coffin, that he would be worshipped by the people that followed, especially as he continued to come back to aid them before the Overseer gave the decree of divine duties, which was something that banned aspects from, you know, intervening in the mortal world.
Then wait, how do they do their jobs if they can't
They can't.
intervene?
Sorry, they cannot intervene. Like they cannot have favorite. They can't favorite one specific area to divine intervene in. They have to
Mm.
try and equalize it everywhere. He and many others were specifically helping out their homeland more than anywhere else. Even if their home country didn't exist anymore, they were like favoring that area. The next aspect we'll say is the aspect of justice. We're jumping around on the timeline because he was uplifted in the 5500s. He is a desert elf, or as I mentioned before, an orc, but they're just called desert elves. His name is Srexgren Krensanis. I should say these out loud more to make sure I can actually pronounce them. He was formerly a tribal chief of an ancient tribe of desert elves in an area known as the Naxton Desert, modern day Naxterland, who was made an aspect after he allowed magic users to take refuge in his tribe during the Purge of Magic, Dark Age of Magic, all that stuff. He, was. I don't even think that's the correct part of the timeline. I might have to move him. 1 second. He is helping people escape the purge of magics 3,000 years early. So I'm gonna have to fix that. uh, I
He was
might
just ahead of his time.
He's ahead of his time, literally. The next aspect we'll talk about is the aspect of volcanoes, who's a greater dragon, the last of his kind. He is specifically from a greater dragon species of the Tarask variety. His name is Redress. Okay, I know I can pronounce this. Redreskina, probably. And is currently in some kind of transit within the great volcanoes of, plug your ears because you're not supposed to know this yet, Naxterland. You can unplug your ears now. Ever since his internment in the volcanoes, because he fell into some kind of trance, and people just assumed he was in prison there for some reason. Those volcanoes and every other volcano on the planet has seen increased volatility, and some have even left their dormant status and come back to life. This is especially bad for the ones around him, which seem to be seeing it worse. The next aspect we'll talk about is the aspect of the oceans. It is an aspect species, something called a greater leviathan. His species is specifically, or sorry, he himself is specifically, it doesn't really seem to have a gender. It is most commonly referred to as Lona Morgagolan, which just means greater ocean terror, pretty much. Lona Morgagolan. The aspect of a sky is also a member of an aspect species. Its species are called Krensis. If you've ever seen a picture of a Dunkleostis, it's that, but can fly and giant wings. Its name is Rungagodon, or Rungodon. which just means sky terror. The I'm should be going in order, but I'm not, so this is going to be a bit confusing. The next one we'll talk about is the aspect of strength, who's another desert elf. His name is Araxin Arik. He is from modern day Zaroma, though it was 1,000 years ago, so it would have been Arendonian. Because he was uplifted in 1755 BHW. He became the aspect of strength after saving a child from a lesser dragon of the Raxiscan species. He's may not be the brightest aspect, but he is by far, the strongest. He's the aspect of strength, and he's one of the kindest by admission of most aspects. He, it routinely saves people throughout the world. There is another desert elf. This one being, I think, the only uh, female woman, as opposed to male women, trans people, I guess. The aspect of anger and serenity is a desert elf named Krakander Sherkana. Um, uh, Before being an aspect, was probably a normal person. For the late 1200s BHW, until they were uplifted into the aspect status, and they suddenly developed bipolar, which was not the realistic one. It's the cartoony, unrealistic one you see in like things where, you know, one minute they're the calmest, nicest person in the world, and the next minute they're, I don't know, kicking puppies. You see divine, seemingly induced bipolar is because when they became an aspect, the overseer was drunk. He and his buddies, because he does have friends,
What?
developed.
I did not know that.
Oh,
Wow.
silence! Oh,
Who would
silence!
want to be friends with the
Other
overseer? I'm
gods,
sorry.
other gods would. They have since petitioned the overseer to please undo it. I hate this, please. But the overseer is always a bit too busy to do so. So, the next aspect we will talk about is the aspect of love. So, technically, it should be the aspect of love, lust, passion, and abuse, though. Another aspect is trying to take that second one. uh, the aspect of love is a sun elf named Saurian Renmoven, and they have been an aspect since 1733 BHW. They are in charge of the protection of love, and their main job is to go after, abusers, people who use love to justify horrid actions. Pretty much just physical abuse. Not usually sexual abuse, because that's another aspect's job, which is why that other aspect is trying to get the lust one. The aspect of love has several nicknames. I'm trying to make other nicknames for the other ones, but I keep forgoing. The aspect of love is known as the Redemptive Flame, the Velvet Blade, the Rose of Thorns, the Avenging Embrace, and the Morning Star, and the Keeper of Sacred Bonds. They mainly take on their task by going to, the people they've been begged and or just asked to deal with, and igniting them in a magenta flame known as the Flames of Purification, while reading out whatever they've done to, the people around them. While this flame burns the abuser and only the abuser. Yes, it is fire, so it does burn and hurt, like all that. That person also feels also feels all the pain and or suffering that they have ever caused, whether it be physical, psychological, or emotional, to their lover, anyone who've they've hurt. That's the reason they've been called. Upon the process of being burnt alive is done, which lasts until the aspect is done reading off their sins, the flames will leave nothing but bones and ash. They can be used to purify the sin and malice from a person if it's been long enough since they committed the sin, and also they've genuinely grown as a person, um, and also the person they abused forgives them. That last one is usually, sorry, usually it's the second and third requirement that cause the flames to not do that thing, um, because many of these abusers are not repentant. We only have two more or three more aspects actually left that I can for that I can think
May
of.
I ask a question about the aspect, a certain part of the aspect of love that the party has experienced?
Go right ahead.
The wave hand thingy.
That is, oh, the thing that every aspect can do.
I
It's
didn't know. How was I supposed to know?
industry did it in the last session.
I was focused on other things.
Okay, the aspect of uh, what they're referring to is a spell that all aspects know and use typically in order to get people to stop groveling on their hands and knees and to just listen to what the aspect has to say. Though it can also be used to help children or whatever they need to, like people with emotional problems. It is a spell that, upon being used, the aspect will. It can either be done by touching the person you're trying to calm down or waving your hand, and it will cause the person to a uh, suddenly feel an immense wave of calm rush over them, and b anything that might cause this to like any problems with thinking or like someone who's so broken that being calm might cause them to cry or anything. They just kind of it just kind of like goes away for a second. Anything that might cause this new clarity of mind to make things worse disappears for a minute. And then once the spell is or until the aspect stops casting it, and then the moment the spell is uncast, that stuff will slowly reappear, but at such a slow speed that it won't start affecting the person until after it's all back, and it'll usually be the the least traumatic things first, then the most traumatic things last, in order to ease it back in. However, you would be able to do that. Back to the aspects. The next aspect is the aspect of industry. He's a newer one, only lifted in 179 BHW. He's a wood elf named Alrexian Smavana, and he is known as amongst the other aspects, as the proprietor of the constructs, because he's known to make small little machines, like little, not golems, but like usually like little frogs or small mammals or just like little guys. He makes little one thing, and this automata.
Guys,
Before, okay, before he uses magic to bring them to life. Though one silly little fact about him, he has just the largest crush on the aspect of love, who herself doesn't know, because she's either A, not paying attention, or B, the ability that would allow her to sense, oh, this person likes this person, or this person is destined for this person, does not work on other aspects. Cancels out, pretty much. He makes no attempts, or actually, he makes quite a few attempts to keep secret from his peers, but it's so obvious that everyone knows, except for the new ones, that just haven't seen him in a room together. The next aspect is the aspect of strategy, a human named Sonarin. Now, if you'll remember when I was talking about the aspect of music, aspects aren't allowed to, you know, stay within like their home region, their home area after they become aspects. They're supposed to abandon all mortal titles and possessions and then come to live with the aspects, except for clothes. You can keep those. He doesn't know or really do his duties as an aspect because the overseer, when the overseer made him an aspect, the overseer had to leave before explaining to Sonarin his duties, before forgetting that Sonarin existed for 2,000 years. Actually, over
the
2,000.
overseer is very silly sometimes, guys.
He's not omniscient, which is the only reason he can just forget things. He was uplifted in 2,219 BHW, and the overseer didn't remember that he even existed until 44 PHW. It took a little
So
while,
silly.
and he only remembered when the country that Sinarin was leading invaded an island that of whom the Soul Civilization was allied with the Overseer's favorite country, the Knights of Infinity. The next aspect we'll talk about is the aspect of the Knights of Infinity. Probably human, more than likely a guy. Race and kind of gender is unknown because he is constantly wearing a suit of armor, of which he wears so often that because all aspects are required to have a halo to differentiate them in case they change their form. Um, he made his helmet his halo. He is one of the greatest strategists, leaders, warriors, and spellcasters of all the aspects, usually second only to the aspect of that thing. He's third and fourth for a couple of them, but that's just because we have a lot of overlapping aspects. He was once known as the Knight of Infinity, was once the Grand General of the Knights Order of War, and was also a revolutionary leader for the Infinitus Order, back, before the Knights of Infinity were their own country. It was during the reign of the first leader of the Knights of Infinity that he was uplifted to an aspect in 355 BHW, and after which they disappeared without a trace from the mortal world, at least from, the archipelago where the knights exist. They would only go back as what many would eventually call the Overseer's executioner until, the Knights of Infinity reappeared, and he revealed himself as their aspect. He was known by several titles: the Marshal of Eternity, the Spellwright Eternal, the Blade of Infinity, the Herald of Finality, the Paladin of the Last Word, and the General Ascendant. Now, people that didn't know about the Knights of Infinity came up with these titles, and you may be wondering, why are they also eternal infinity? No one knows. It just sounded right. And we have one more aspect to talk about, though they're also not written down, and only because I have a smidgen of lore about them already. There is an aspect who became an aspect the year after the aspect of love, who is the aspect of sex. Um, they are kind of just the same as the aspect of love, but just for the fun parts. The aspect of sex is the one trying to get the overseer to let them take lust and maybe passion from love's name, and also they are trying their they're trying their damnedest to for everyone to see them as not just a whore, which you wouldn't be able to tell based on the way they dress. And that's where I'm leaving that aspect. I think that's hey, we're talking about just the divine, not the aspects. Let's talk about the overseer for a little bit because it's been a while since I've talked directly about him. Now, as previously mentioned, he has his own alcohol that's meant to make gods drunk. He's a little forgetful sometimes, and but he is still omnipotent and not omniscient. He's the picture that you've been seeing for most of the video, if I haven't fixed the editing. Um, um, and he's the divine master of all Vivventia. He controls trillions of worlds. He is trillions of years old. Um, and this is his favorite world. He tries to be usually uh, non-biased, but this is his favorite world. He has a favorite country. It's the Knights of Infinity. Uh, Most of the prayers that we've been created for him are all definitely not ripped straight from the Catholic Church. Literally, one is
We would
our
never.
yeah. One of them is literally "Our Father who art upon us in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will." I just
I don't
took.
think the Catholic Church can sue us.
I'm sure it's been like what 2,000 years since those prayers were created. They're definitely the public domain by now. Um. Oh, we didn't talk about one silly aspect: the traitor. Um, the first ever aspect, who was the original aspect of Alphabetcha. I might change whenever the aspect of Alphabetcha was, uplifted just to make this better, funnier. Who's the original aspect of Elfbetcha? Was a human. He was, the overseer's favorite, as is typical with Satan figures, because God loved Lucifer until the day he was betrayed. The traitor is now not an aspect technically anymore, but he's still immortal. That's about it. His he led a rebellion against the overseer, which lasted a decade, um, which not long in the history of the world, but ever since then, in the late 3000s, BHW, ever since then, the traitor aspect has been forced to walk the globe for all of eternity, unending. Not even sleep allows him to stop walking. The only people who can see him are the people who followed him, who are now immortal demons who feel nothing but pain. If you want to see what I imagine them looking like, look up Chaos Spawn from Warhammer 40k. I will try to create my own design at one point. And other aspects who are required to, I think I made it so it's like once every couple decades they have to go visit him. They don't have to say anything or do anything. They just have to see him. They have to witness him. The traitor.
Make sure he's there.
Oh no, there's no way he can escape. He can't use magic anymore.
Oh,
His connection to the veil has been severed. He can feel that because the veil is your soul.
I forget how magic works in Vivventia.
No, you're good.
My bad.
The demons of the traitor aspect are visible by normal people, and while they can see the traitor, they usually feel shame upon seeing him. Now, the reason I don't make them look like traditional, Christian demons, despite the fact that a lot of the prayers and the aspects themselves are semi-divine or semi-inspired by Christianity, is because well, I didn't want there to be that whole thing where it's like, tieflings, they're infernal, they're demonic. No, 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 no. I wanted there to be a very clear separation between, this is a tiefling. Yeah, they have the horns. They're usually red. They usually have horns, at least. They have the red. They have all that, right? And then demons, who look like flesh monsters. The aspect of the traitor aspect was, after he was thrown out, he became the overseer's second least favorite being. His first least favorite being, he wouldn't know for a little while there. So for a while, the aspect of, the traitor aspect was his least favorite building. Until about, 2,300, about 23 or 2,400 BHW, when the Overseer would meet another god. Now, he doesn't always spend all his time in Vivventia. He has other worlds. So, sometimes he needs to, go to other worlds. And this world he had just created with his fellow gods. And, and they were pretty close friends. But he met this other god, and she was named Lorai.
Thunder.
I wonder.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Lorai was, the god of her own world. It was called Nuria, and she, I don't really know why.
Still is.
Still is. Yeah, it is. Still is. And I don't really know why she worked together on this world. Why don't we have the person who, it is their god in canon? So why don't you write it? Or why don't you tell me, why was she working with these other gods on this world?
Hold on.
I don't even, it's not in the lore, in your lore document. I know that.
I know, I'm
You're just trying to think
looking
of,
for...
I
Listen,
just,
I'm not as
the
good
first-
at improvising as you, okay? I figured it was more of a just like... It was originally knowing friends got together, dragged their friends that didn't...
She just
Friends
happened
of
to know.
friends. There we
She
go.
just happened to know one of the gods in this project. Anyway, they met, and they became friends. And for like the next 2-3 decades, they were really close friends. And then, she and the overseer started dating. That's not uncommon for gods to do that. They dated for about 2 centuries until over the course of those 2 centuries, the overseer allowed Lorai into Vivventia, making her the only other deity to ever enter the world. In fact, being the only outside thing to ever enter the world ever. If we don't count the things the Overseer created based on things from other worlds. Anyway, she was allowed in, and for a few decades there, she, was doing fine. And then, somewhere in the middle of 2187 BHW, she sunk the old world, the homeland, the area where elves and humans come from. Now, the Overseer, he was a little pissed, and she was being stubborn and refusing to lift it out of the ocean again. Because another god did it, he couldn't really change. So that's great. And then, sometime else within, either within the year or, within the next decade, we haven't decided yet because, we're both writing that character. Lorai, along with another god that she didn't really know, hooked up. Now, Lorai, being the arrogant piece that they were, decided that, it was okay because the Overseer would never figure it out. Because
Little
no, you're fine.
foreshadowing here. He figured it out.
But it's fine. The Overseer will never know. Then he figured it out. Then he learned, right? So the Overseer called Lorai to him, within the world. And he was, upon one of the highest mountains in all of Vivventia, and he was looking out upon his world. And he said to Lorai, "Isn't this world beautiful?" And, she agreed because, it was her boyfriend. She didn't really care, but, it was his magnum opus, his greatest creation. And then he turned to her, looked her in the eye, and said, "And you will never gaze upon it again," or before expelling her from the world. Permanently. She is no longer allowed ever back in Vivventia.
From her worlds are, but that's for another time.
Yeah, she kind of, a little bit, might have gone on a little bender. Her world did not experience good times after that for a little while. But,
yeah, it was,
yeah, it was a little silly. But the Overseer then became very distrustful of her, and that made her his number one least favorite being in the entire multiverse. Ooh, one silly little fun fact about the aspect of strategy that I just remembered: he has kids. That's the end of the fun fact. You'll get to know more about that when we get to Vertalia. Anyway, that has been today's episode on the Divine. I would like to thank my co-host.
well, it was
Unless,
so great to be here, even though I barely said anything.
yes, unless you have something else to say. Anything?
Why did I agree to this? That's my only. I'd like to clarify that as a joke. I enjoyed being here, and I'm not being held against my will.
Since that'll be the end of today, I would like to, as I just said, thank my co-host, and I will see you all in another 2 weeks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.